Hello and welcome to today's mini training where I'm going to be answering your manifestation questions, and at the same time I'm also going to be recording this for the Manifest Edit podcast. I truly believe that the quality of I know there's this quote like the quality of your life is based on the quality of questions that you ask yourself, but I believe that the quality of your life is not based on the quality of questions that you ask yourself, but it's actually based on what you do with the answers of the questions that you ask yourself, right? And I always say this, like the setting of the goal is easy, the writing the affirmation is easy, all of that stuff is easy, but it's actually showing up for yourself after that. That's the part that people find challenging and that people actually fall off with. So if you want to really get value from the questions that you're asking about manifestation, about mindset, about your growth journey, about your healing journey, about any of it, then you also need to be willing and ready to take action on the answers that you get. And now I'm not necessarily saying straight away you need to go and do something, but you need to be in the mindset of, okay, how can I apply this to my life? How does this make sense for me? And that's the other thing as well. I'm going to be sharing my answers to these questions, and this is based on my experience, either personally or from my clients or from people in my life, and I'm just sharing what has worked for me and what has worked for them. You obviously need to have a degree of discernment and apply things to your life in a way that works best for you, and I would recommend this to anybody. So the first question that I have is, what was your life like before manifestation, and how has your life changed since? So my life before manifestation, like on the outside, I guess it looked pretty good. I was at uni studying for my first degree at that point in time. I was studying for my undergrad in media, and I was coming towards, like, this is like the beginning of my manifestation journey, like what really sparked my manifestation journey. I was coming to the end of my first degree, and I was really struggling because I didn't know what I was going to do after uni, which is a very normal feeling that people have, but I had the additional stressors of having been orphaned at age 14. So I knew that when I finished uni, I didn't have a family home that I was going to be able to go back to, or a place where I could stay while I was figuring things out. I was really like out there in the world alone. And if you don't know much about the care system, how it works is you are in the care system until essentially age 18, and then you're transferred over to the leaving care system, which is less check-ins, less support, but this is certainly how it works in Scotland. I don't know how it works anywhere else in the world, but just coming from my experience. So you are in the care system till you're age 18, and then if you go to uni, you are then in the leaving care system, and they help you with that transition from school to uni. And so my leaving care team financially supported me to be able to go to university, which obviously I'm very grateful for. However, what happens with the leaving care team is that once you have, in their eyes, left care, then you're basically on your own. So I knew when I finished uni, I was going to be on my own. I wasn't going to be getting any more support from the leaving care team, no emails, no check-ins, and also, of course, no financial support either. So that put a lot of stress on me as I was coming to the end of my first degree for really the last year. And then I was also just undergoing a lot of anxiety and depression related to that. And it honestly, and to be honest, I didn't really talk to my friends about it at the time either, because it's not something that anybody could really relate to. I remember being at a promo job with, I don't even want to say one of my friends, just someone that I knew. And when I told her that, oh yeah, my mom passed away when I was younger, she's like, oh, so like, who do you share your uni grades with, and all of that stuff that no one cares about. And I honestly had no concept of that's what other people were doing. I had no idea that people were sharing those things. So when you don't know, you don't know. And for me and my experience, I was like, people just really aren't going to understand my experience. So I really chose not to share with my friends what I was going through at that time, and kind of just was suffering in silence, really. So ultimately, what I decided to do, what I thought would be the best decision at the time based on how I was feeling, was going back to university straight after finishing my undergrad. I went straight back to uni and I did my master's degree in digital marketing. And so initially that felt like a really good idea to me, because I was like, oh great, while I'm figuring things out, while I'm working out what I really want to do, I can just go back to uni and do my master's. I'm really good at studying. I got first class honors in my other degree. I'm like, this'll be easy. This'll be a cakewalk. But pretty soon into my degree, I realized that I had made the wrong decision. And it wasn't because it wasn't even like, oh, I found what I'm studying really challenging. It was just like, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this. And I'm doing this purely for the wrong reasons, because I knew that I would still get that support from the leaving care team. And I was like, okay, this is going to give me time to figure out what I want to do. So pretty soon into going back to uni to do my master's degree, that anxiety and depression really just began to build. I was very miserable. I was spending my weekends partying a lot and just not really feeling good after a weekend of partying either, knowing that I was going to have to show up to this degree that I hated. So that was a really fucking difficult time of my life, to be honest. Probably up there with like the worst periods of my life. And I spent the first half of the year really depressed, and there was one point where I literally stopped going to uni, and I was on the verge of failing my degree, which is very abnormal for me, being someone who was good at studying, and also because I didn't find what I was doing hard. But it was like mentally it was taking its toll on me. I remember I would literally show up to uni and our classes would be for the entirety of the day, and I would just go away for 5 minutes and sit in the bathroom just so I didn't have to be in the class, because I just couldn't face being there. So it had been a couple of months and I'd basically not really been showing up to uni consistently. And one of my lecturers had emailed me, because he had also taught me from my previous degree, and he's like, this is really unlike you, like what's going on? And I basically just had a meeting with him, and I'm like, I'm severely depressed and I'm really struggling to get through this. I've asked for counselling through the NHS, which is like free healthcare system in Scotland. And they basically just said, we don't have anyone to see you for like a year. Just try and talk to your friends about what you're going through, which was not helpful at all for me. So I spoke to him about what I was feeling, and he got me in through the university counselling service, which was also something that I had tried to do. And they said, we don't have any space, but he got me in like literally the next week to the university counselling service. And then one of my friends at the time as well had said that they would come with me to the doctors to speak to them on my behalf, because they didn't feel like they were taking me seriously. So we went together, spoke to the doctors, and it was like the same answer of we can't get you in to see anyone. And then they basically spoke on my behalf, and they were like, yeah, she needs to see someone like yesterday. What you're doing right now is not good enough. And then a few weeks later, I also got in through counselling through the NHS as well. So it was really great having that person advocate for me. But ultimately, like, therapy was not what I thought it was going to be. I did not have a good relationship with my therapist. I didn't feel like she respected me. I didn't respect her for the way that she treated me and spoke to me. I felt like she brought a lot of her own biases to the relationship, which is it just made me feel uncomfortable and uneasy. And obviously you're sharing some really difficult things with this person. You need to be able to trust them and have an open relationship. So after like a month or so, I stopped going to therapy, but that was the catalyst. That was the catalyst for my manifestation journey, because I knew that I didn't want to feel miserable anymore. I didn't want to feel the way that I was feeling, and I knew that there was more out there for me. So what really sparked my entry into manifestation was a book that a friend had given me called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway by Suzanne Jeffers. Like, that was the first thing. The second thing was coming across the documentary The Secret, which is many people's introduction into manifestation. And I was like, oh my God, yes, I love it. I'm obsessed. This needs to be my way of living. And I remember I was speaking to all my friends about it. And because I grew up Buddhist, I was Christian until I was aged like maybe 7. And then from 8 to 15, I was Buddhist. So a lot of the principles I felt in spirituality were not dissimilar from what I had learned when I was Buddhist. So it wasn't like, oh my goodness, this is fucking crazy. I was like, this feels like I'm remembering something that I once knew. And I remember I had a friend, I'm like, we have to have a vision board party. We can create our realities. Oh my goodness. And it just gave me so much hope that I could change my situation. And then really things really picked up very quickly from there. I created my first vision board. I had like me graduating uni, like a picture of me in the middle, which is still something that I recommend to all my clients. Like, make sure you have a picture of yourself on your vision board. I had a picture of me in the middle and all of these things that I wanted to achieve that I did end up achieving by the end of the year. And then that was also the year that I moved from Scotland to Australia. So 2016 really was a very pivotal year for me, and that was the beginning of my manifestation journey. Essentially, my entry was through The Secret, but then I discovered more about conscious manifestation and building a better relationship with yourself. So that was how my manifestation journey started. And what's changed for me since I started my manifestation journey is everything. Everything in my life has changed since then. I have a better relationship with myself. I have a better relationship with the people who are in my life. I have just the most incredible life. I left Scotland to move to Australia for what I thought was going to be a year. I've now been here for 8 years, almost 8 years. I have built my business coaching in mindset and manifestation, helping women to really come home to themselves and discover who they are, do all that identity work as well as the manifestation work in the process. And like, just everything is, and I'm not saying everything is perfect all the time, but I have such a strong mindset now and such a deep understanding of how I can co-create and how I can collaborate with the universe to create my reality, that's ultimately why everything has shifted for me. And choosing to maintain that mindset, choosing to maintain that way of being instead of falling to that victim mentality, which is why that's another one of the things that I'm passionate about talking about, is how people can shift from victim to creator mentality, because I spent a lot of time in that place myself, and I know that in order to shift into that creator mentality, you have to really let go of this idea that you're a victim and that life is happening to you. And a lot of people will hold on to that. It feels much easier to hold on to that limited identity than it does to take on an expansive identity, because for most people, for everyone actually, that's our default, and you have to diverge from what the default is to dream of something different, to dream of something better. So question number 2 is why do we hold on to victim mentality, which I feel like leads really nicely from what I was just speaking about. So I did touch on this a little bit before, but one of the reasons why we hold on to victim mentality is because that is our default setting. And especially as kids, the way to get what you want as a child is by crying or getting the attention of your parent. And we are walking around as wounded children for, that's what your subconscious mind is like your inner child. And so a lot of the childlike behaviors that we had when we were younger still pertain to how we show up now as adults. So one of the reasons is because it's just our default setting. And the other reason is because it can feel scary to do something different. It can feel scary to walk down the, what's that expression? The path less trodden, the less walked path. I don't know what the specific wording is, but it can feel scary trying to walk down a different path and ultimately do something that you've never done before. So that's why people hold on to the victim mentality. But at any point you can choose to do something different and to let go of that and to see what else there could be for you. But it takes a willingness to change, and not everyone is willing to go there. So you really have to question yourself when you say that you want to make a change. Are you also willing to do what it takes to get there? And are your results indicating that you have a willingness to show up for yourself? Because if you're not getting the results that you want, there's some decoding work that needs to go on to understand why that is. Question number 3. What standards can we adopt to instantly up-level our experience? One of the things that I love to talk about is the importance of standards, and when it comes to manifestation, because your standards are really creating a they're maintaining a baseline for what you expect in your life. So if you have low standards, let's say, for example, in relationships, you have low standards in relationships, that means someone can show up and do the bare minimum, give you like breadcrumbs, less than breadcrumbs, and you're going to take that and run with that because you are not used to other people or even yourself giving you more than that. So it's going to feel like a lot to you because you have low standards. If, on the other hand, you're used to treating yourself nicely, you're used to treating yourself with love, and someone comes along and they're giving you breadcrumbs, they're giving you the bare minimum, you're not going to stand for that because that doesn't align with the standards that you set for your life and that you speak over your life. So standards apply to every single area of our life. Also, money is a big one for people. So if your standards for money is that you are not used to having money or you don't feel comfortable around money, then you are, even if you manifest money into your life, you're not going to feel super comfortable holding on to it. So I would say that the standards that you choose to adopt are very personal to you. And in my membership program, the Becoming Her Collective, we actually had an entire module on how to create standards, how to assess, and how to determine what your existing standards are. So if you'd like to learn more about the Becoming Her Collective, if you're watching the live, you can just DM me the word collective. And if you're listening on the podcast, then you can head to the link in the show notes to learn how you can access those trainings, and also the entire vault of trainings in the Becoming Her Collective as well. There's about 6 months of live trainings, meditations, practices, audio trainings, like the works, not just around setting a standard, but around the narrative that you are creating for your life. Standards are so important, and I think it's just one of the ways that you can create a blueprint for your life is by maintaining and upholding these standards. Like, one of the quickest ways to change the reality that you're experiencing, if you're not on board with the reality that you're currently experiencing, is by changing your standards. And yes, at first it is going to be you upholding those standards and you catering to those standards, but then what you're going to notice is that your experience is going to shift in relation to those standards, because it just does not make sense to live any other way. So if my standard is that I only expect like such deep, beautiful connections with my friends, it's not going to make sense for me to have a friend who is I don't even know what the word is, to have a friend who is not showing up for me. Like, I feel like I'm putting more effort in than them. I've definitely had relationships like that in the past, but it just wouldn't make sense for me to maintain relationships like that now, because I have such a high standard for the relationships I entertain. And I also believe like I hold myself to a high caliber as a friend as well. Like, I'm a very good friend, and that's something that I intentionally work on, and I want to make sure that I'm showing up as a good friend for other people, and that I have people in my life who are the same for me. Next question. What do I do if I can't visualize? This is a great one, because until like pretty recently, until a couple of years ago, I actually didn't realize that when people were visualizing, they were actually seeing things. I thought when people were visualizing, they were just thinking about a concept, because that's what I would do. So when I close my eyes, let's say, for example, think of an apple. When people who visualize close their eyes and are thinking of an apple, they will see a picture of an apple in some shape or form. Maybe it's a cartoon apple, maybe it's an apple that they have in their fruit bowl. Some way or another, they are going to have a concept of what that actually looks like and see it with behind their eyes. But for me, when I close my eyes and think of an apple, I think of the idea of an apple, which is maybe going to sound like confusing if you're someone who does visualize. Like, what do you mean you think of the idea of an apple? But it just makes sense when that's what you've been doing your whole life. So that way of visualizing absolutely still works for me, because the point of visualizing is not like look at pictures over and over again. The point of visualizing is to make yourself feel a certain way. So I still feel a certain way by thinking of the concepts. I absolutely make vision boards, and very powerful vision boards at that, by having the concepts and the things that I want to manifest be what I'm thinking about when I'm looking at my vision board. So if you're someone who's like, oh, I can't visualize, you can visualize, just perhaps not in the way that you are expecting or that you think you're supposed to visualize. So yes, it's still a process that works, even if the way that you interpret those images is different from other people. So moving on to next question is, how do we shift our identities? Identity work is honestly one of the core things that I do with my clients as a manifestation coach. And the reason why I spend so much time on identity work is because this is probably one of the most life-changing realizations that I've ever had, is when I was manifesting things. So I'd been on my manifestation journey for a few years at this point. And then I looked back at a vision board I had created. And I'm loving the segues between these questions. And I looked back at a vision board I created, and none of the things on that vision board had manifested, which was very confronting for me, because I'm like, I'm the manifestation queen. What do you mean none of these things have manifested? But the reason why none of those things had manifested was because I was so focused on the intentions of what I wanted to manifest, rather than the values that I wanted to speak over my life. Again, going back to standards and who I wanted to be and how I wanted to show up. I had just literally picked random things off Pinterest, random things off Instagram, and I'm like, yeah, that looks good. I want that too. But manifestation is such a deeply, deeply personal process. And in order to really manifest your desires, you need to know who you are and who you want to be. Again, with my membership program, the Becoming Her Collective, this entire program is dedicated to that journey of discovering who you are, aligning with your purpose, really getting excited about who you're here to be, and all those shifts that it actually takes to become that person. The people in the membership are not just there because this is like, oh, a cutesy, like, oh, I'm just going to meditate for 5 minutes. They're there because they are literally rewiring their neural pathways to change how they're showing up, to become closer to the woman that they know they're here to be. And again, going back to willingness to change, a lot of people are not willing to change their identities, and especially their limiting identities, because they are so comfortable with them. They're so used to them. But just because that's who you are now does not mean that's who you always have to be, or that's who you always will be. We're always changing all the time. And I think now, I was at the nail salon yesterday, and she's like asking me if I was on break from uni and stuff, and I was like, actually, I work from home. And she's like, work from home? Like, I'm like, yeah, I'm actually 30. She's like, 30? I thought you were 21. I think about me at 21, and actually this was when I was just leaving to come to Australia. I was such a baby, and I was such a baby. I was so young. My mindset was so different, and there were definitely a lot of things that I needed to work on at that point in time. So different. I'm even not just like 10 years ago, obviously I'm very different from 10 years ago, but even the person I was a couple of years ago. We're constantly evolving, constantly changing, and you can either choose to be conscious of that change and choose to determine what direction you want to move in, or you can just like kind of sit back and let life happen to you. And I just don't think that's the vibe at all. So the people I work with are very much of the belief that life is not just happening to me. I want to decide what my future looks like. I know maybe they know some of the things that they desire or the vision that they're working towards, and they want the support to get there. So that's what the Becoming Her Collective is for, is a space for your evolution and the support while you go on that journey to becoming that person, because it can be lonely if who you're becoming is so wildly different from who you've been, and certain relationships in your life no longer make sense as a result of that. That can feel very isolating, and is a reason why people are often tempted to revert back or just stay the same. I had someone comment on my TikTok yesterday that it's really challenging to change when people say like, I miss who you used to be. And I can imagine that's hard to hear, but ultimately you don't owe anyone else anything. You don't owe people past versions of you. The only person you really owe anything to is yourself. So I am going to wrap it up for the questions today, and we're going to continue with part 2 later on this week. If you have a question that I didn't get around to and you're watching live, feel free to pop it over to me in the DMs. And if you have a question that you would like to have answered by me and you're listening to the podcast, then you can send me an Instagram DM over on Align with Efia. So that's Align as in ALIGN with Efia, and the link to my Instagram is actually in the show notes as well, so you can look in the show notes and you can DM me your question, and then the next live call that I do, I will answer your question on the live, so that you have that to be able to refer back to as well. So I have absolutely loved getting ready with you today and answering some of your manifestation questions, sharing a bit of my story, my journey, and also some of the things that my clients are working through at the moment. And what I want to leave you with is this, that it may feel like it's scary to change, but it's also scary not to change, to know that you have so much untapped potential within you, so much desire within you, so much longing in you for a different life, a different reality, to even experience more. Like, your life doesn't have to be a clusterfuck like mine was back at that point in 2016. Your life doesn't have to be a complete clusterfuck to want to change your life, to want to change things. It can just feel like, I want more. I want to feel even more abundant than I feel right now. And that is reason enough. So my love, that is it for today's chat, and I will see you in the next one.